The command center of the Vrel mothership hummed with the soft clicking sounds of worried communication. Captain Tom stood at the observation window, his four slender arms crossed over his chitinous chest. Outside, the beautiful blue-green sphere of his homeworld was cracking apart, veins of molten fire spreading across its surface. "The core destabilization is accelerating," reported First Officer Mira, her antennae drooping with despair. "We have less than 2 planetary cycles before total collapse." Tom's compound eyes reflected the doom of their world. The Vrel had lived peacefully for thousands of years, developing art, music, and science, but never the weapons or resource-gathering technologies that the Galactic Council valued. Now, that same council had turned its back on them. And the council's response? Tom asked, though he already knew the answer. Myra's mandibles clicked softly. "They say our situation is regrettable, but not their concern. They claim their resources are stretched thin and cannot be wasted on species of limited value." Around the command center, the other Vrel officers maintained their composure, though Tom could sense their fear through the subtle shifts in their pheromones. The Vrel were a hive-minded species, but each maintained individual consciousness. Their shared emotional state was one of growing panic. "How many ships are space-worthy?" Tom asked, turning to the engineering officer. 7 large transport vessels and the mothership," replied Engineer Dax. "Enough for perhaps 40,000 Vrel. Not even a tenth of our population." The weight of this knowledge settled heavily on Tom. As captain of the Vrel Defense Force, a small group that had never fought a war, the task of saving their species now fell to him. The ruling Council of Elders had given him full authority once the Galactic Council had abandoned them. "Begin loading immediately," Tom ordered. "Food stores, water recyclers, breeding chambers, and cultural archives take priority. We must preserve who we are, even if most of us cannot be saved." The evacuation process was heartbreaking. Families were separated as the elderly voluntarily stayed behind to make room for the young. Scientists destroyed their life's work after transferring only essential data to the ships. Artists wept as they selected which precious few creations would represent their civilization's legacy. 7 days later, the small fleet of Vrel ships rose from the dying planet's surface. From orbit, they watched as the final cataclysm began, continents fracturing, oceans boiling away, the very air igniting. Billions of Vrel perished in moments. The survivors maintained ritual silence, their communal grief too deep for sounds. Their journey began with hope. The Galactic Council had denied them refugee status or a new homeworld, but surely individual alien civilizations would show mercy. The Vrel ships set course for the nearest inhabited system, their engines straining to maintain life support for the overcrowded refugees. The first alien ship they encountered was a massive Draxian trader. Tom personally sent the distress call, explaining their plight and begging for supplies, even just water and basic nutrients. The Draxian captain's holographic image appeared on the command screen, reptilian eyes cold and calculating. "Vrel refugees have no trading value. The Council has marked you as resource negative. Assisting you would damage our standing. Find your own salvation." The transmission cut off abruptly. The Draxian ship altered course slightly to avoid them, then accelerated away. This scene repeated over the next few weeks. A Moralian science vessel scanned them briefly, then departed without communication. A hegemony battlecruiser warned them to stay clear of established trade routes. A passenger liner from the wealthy core worlds actually increased speed when they approached, as if the Vrel were carrying some contagious disease. 60 days into their exodus, the situation grew desperate. 3 of the transport ships had developed critical system failures. Food reserves were nearly depleted. The recyclers could no longer purify enough water for all survivors. "We must face reality," Mira said quietly during the officers' meeting. "We were deemed unworthy by the galaxy. Perhaps our extinction is inevitable. Tom's mandibles clacked sharply in protest. No. While one Vrel lives, we have hope. Recalibrate our long-range scanners. There must be some corner of this galaxy where mercy still exists. For days, their scanners searched desperately. Then, on the edge of their detection range, they found unusual signals coming from an unremarkable yellow star in a spiral arm far from the galactic center. The signals were primitive by Council standards: radio waves, television broadcasts, digital communications. But they contained something the Vrel hadn't heard elsewhere. Music. Stories. Laughter. It's not on any Council charts, Dax noted. Must be an undiscovered world. Tom felt his antennae quiver with the first hint of hope in months. Set course immediately. If the Council doesn't know them, perhaps they don't know the Council's ways either. The Vrel fleet, engines faltering and systems failing, changed direction toward their final hope, a small blue planet called Earth. The approach to Earth was chaotic. 2 of the 7 transport ships had completely failed, their passengers crowded onto the remaining vessels. The mothership's engines sputtered and died just as they entered the outer reaches of the solar system, forcing them to drift on emergency power. "We're being scanned," Mira reported, her voice weak from hunger. Like all the Vrel, she had been on half rations for weeks. On the view screens, the blue planet grew larger. Oceans, clouds, and green landmasses became visible. The Vrel officers watched in silence as their sensors detected thousands of artificial satellites, space stations, and the movement of small spacecraft around the planet. They're technologically capable, Dax observed, but still primitive by Council standards. No faster-than-light travel. No gravity manipulation. A transmission suddenly burst through their communication system. The language was unknown, but the tone seemed more curious than threatening. "They're trying to communicate," Tom said. "Activate the universal translator." The translator struggled with the new language, but gradually began to form coherent patterns. The message repeated, "Unknown vessels, please identify yourselves and state your intentions." "This is Earth Space Command." Tom hesitated before responding. Their previous encounters had taught them caution. But they had no choice, their ships were failing, and they would die without help. "This is Captain Tom of the Vrel refugee fleet. Our homeworld has been destroyed. We seek sanctuary and assistance. Our systems are failing. Many of our people are dying." Silence followed. The Vrel command crew looked at each other nervously. Would these humans reject them too? After what seemed like an eternity, the response came, "Vrel fleet, maintain position. We are sending assessment teams to your location. Please do not take aggressive action. We will help if we can." "They're sending help?" Myra's antennae perked up in disbelief. "Without knowing us?" Within hours, small Earth vessels approached the Vrel ships. The humans were clearly cautious, scanning each vessel thoroughly before making contact. When they finally docked with the mothership, Tom led a small greeting party to meet them. The first humans to step through the airlock wore sealed environmental suits. They stopped, clearly startled by the Vrel's insectoid appearance. Tom and his officers stood perfectly still, trying to appear non-threatening despite their alien form. One human stepped forward, removing their helmet to reveal a female face. "I'm Dr. Lisa Chen, xenobiology specialist," she said, the translator converting her words. "We've come to assess your situation and provide emergency aid." Tom's mandibles trembled with emotion. "You are willing to help us? Without knowing what we can offer in return?" Dr. Lisa looked confused. "You're refugees in distress. Of course we'll help." The human team brought medical supplies, food, and repair equipment. They didn't recoil from the Vrel's appearance or demand payment. When they saw the starving refugees, their determination to help only increased. As Tom watched humans treating injured Vrel with gentle care, he experienced a new emotion, one his species had almost forgotten during their long exile. 3 months after their arrival, the Vrel refugee camp sprawled across what humans called the New Mexico Desert. Simple domes constructed of Earth materials housed the 40,000 survivors, while the damaged alien ships stood nearby, slowly being repaired through combined human and Vrel efforts. Tom walked alongside Dr. Lisa through the settlement, watching his people adapt to life on Earth. Despite initial fears on both sides, something remarkable was happening. Trust was growing. "Your people learn quickly," Lisa commented, gesturing toward a group of Vrel working with human farmers to plant experimental crops. The aliens' natural understanding of plant biology had proven invaluable in improving Earth's agricultural techniques. "As do yours," Tom replied. "Your engineers have already grasped concepts it took our ancestors generations to develop." Their conversation paused as they passed a makeshift playground where human and Vrel children played together. The young Vrel, with their softer exoskeletons and playful nature, had been quickest to adapt. They now communicated in a mix of English and clicking Vrel sounds that the human children were beginning to understand. "The children show us the way," Lisa said softly. "They see no difference worth fearing." Not everyone shared this view. In the distance, beyond the security perimeter, a small group of human protesters had gathered. Their signs declared, "Earth for humans," and "No alien invasion." Security forces kept them at a distance, but their angry voices occasionally carried on the wind. "I apologize for them," Lisa said, noticing Tom's compound eyes shifting toward the protest. "Some humans fear what they don't understand." "No need for apology," Tom's antennae dipped respectfully. "That so few oppose us is the true miracle. On any council world, we would have been turned away or enslaved." They continued walking until they reached the communication center, where Vrel technicians were teaching humans about the Galactic Council's technology. Inside, Engineer Dax was demonstrating a star map to fascinated Earth scientists. "These 57 systems form the Galactic Council," Dax explained, pointing to glowing dots. "They control all major trade routes and resource-rich planets. Earth is here," he indicated a spot far from the Council territories, "which is why you've remained undiscovered." "And fortunate for us," Tom added as they entered. "The Council values only technological advancement and resource control. They would see Earth as primitive but resource-rich, a dangerous combination." A human military officer frowned. "You think they'd see us as a target?" "Eventually, yes," Tom's mandibles clicked softly. "Which is why we've been sharing our knowledge of their defenses and weaknesses." Lisa placed a hand gently on Tom's arm, a human gesture of solidarity he had come to appreciate. "Your people have given us more than technology. You've given us perspective. We now know we're not alone, and that the galaxy isn't always kind." Tom looked around at the hybrid community they were building, alien and human working side by side, learning from each other, growing stronger together. "And we have learned," he said quietly, "that kindness may be the most powerful force in the universe." The alarm sounded at 3:17 a.m. Earth time. Tom rushed from his sleeping quarters to the monitoring station where Mira was already analyzing the readings. "Council signature," she confirmed, her clicking speech pattern tense. "A diplomatic vessel. Heavy shielding, but minimal weapons. They'll reach Earth orbit in 6 hours." Tom's antennae flattened against his head. "Alert the human authorities immediately." By dawn, Earth's leaders had assembled in the underground command center beneath the refugee settlement. Military officers, scientists, and government officials from major nations sat alongside the Vrel Leadership Council. Tension filled the room as satellite images tracked the approaching alien ship. "Could they be coming to help your people after all?" asked General White, the American military commander. Tom's mandibles clicked in what humans now recognized as a bitter laugh. "The Council does not change its mind. They come for another purpose." The alien ship entered orbit with precision, ignoring hails from Earth Space Command. Instead, they transmitted directly to the refugee settlement, demanding to speak with Earth's leadership and the Vrel survivors. At the designated meeting point, a military airfield near the settlement, the Council ship landed. Its sleek, silver hull towered over the human aircraft nearby. When the doors opened, the Earth delegation got their first look at a member of the Galactic Council. Ambassador Rex of the Verex Imperium stood nearly 8 feet tall, his scaled body covered in ornate armor. Behind him, 4 armed guards surveyed the humans with obvious disdain. "I speak for the Galactic Council," Rex announced, his translator converting his hissing speech. "We have come concerning the Vrel refugees you harbor." Dr. Lisa stepped forward. "They came seeking help, which we provided. They are welcome on Earth." Rex's yellow eyes narrowed. "Your world is primitive and unaligned. You know nothing of galactic politics. The Vrel were deemed non-viable by Council decree. By assisting them, you position yourselves against Council interests." "We position ourselves on the side of compassion," responded the United Nations Secretary-General. "Something your Council seems to lack." Rex's tail lashed angrily. "Compassion is inefficient. The galaxy operates on power and resources. The Vrel consume resources but provide minimal return. Earth now does the same by supporting them." Tom moved forward, standing tall despite his exhaustion. "Tell them what happens to worlds that defy the Council," he challenged. Rex hissed softly. "Isolation. Quarantine. No trade, no cultural exchange, no technological sharing. Your solar system will be marked forbidden. Any ships attempting to leave will be turned back or destroyed." A murmur ran through the human delegation. Earth had just begun to hope for friendly contact with alien civilizations, and now faced isolation instead. Tom addressed his human allies. "We will leave. We cannot ask you to suffer for our sake." General White placed a hand on Tom's shoulder. "That decision isn't yours to make." The human leaders conferred briefly, then the Secretary-General stepped forward again. "Ambassador Rex, please inform your Council of Earth's response. The Vrel stay under our protection. If that means isolation, we accept those terms." Rex's expression showed genuine surprise, perhaps the first honest emotion he had displayed. "You choose the Vrel over the galaxy's benefits? Incomprehensible." "Perhaps," Dr. Lisa replied quietly, "that's why your Council fears compassion. You don't understand its power." The weeks following Ambassador Rex's departure brought frantic activity to Earth. What had begun as a humanitarian mission to save the Vrel refugees now became a planet-wide effort to prepare for potential isolation, or worse. In a converted aircraft hangar near the main settlement, Tom and Dr. Lisa supervised the integration of Vrel technology with human innovation. The circular room buzzed with activity as mixed teams of human and Vrel engineers worked side by side. "Their shield technology is decades beyond ours," Engineer Dax explained to a group of human scientists, his slender fingers tracing circuits on a holographic display. "But your power generation methods are more efficient than we expected." Across the room, human military technicians studied Vrel sensor arrays while Vrel communication specialists learned Earth's satellite networks. The air hummed with the mingled sounds of human languages and Vrel clicks. "We never developed weapons," Tom admitted to General White as they observed the work. The Council saw that as weakness. The General nodded thoughtfully. "And we developed too many. Perhaps together we find balance." Lisa approached with a tablet displaying data from the latest satellite deployments. "The early warning system is operational. We'll have at least 3 days' notice if Council ships approach." "Will it be enough?" Tom's antennae quivered with concern. "It has to be," Lisa replied, her face showing the strain of weeks of minimal sleep. "The planetary defense shield will be ready for testing next month. Their conversation was interrupted by Mira, rushing in with news. "Captain, we've received a transmission. Another refugee ship is approaching Earth, not Vrel, but Lurarians." Tom's compound eyes widened. "Lurarians? They're from the outer systems, neutral but council-aligned. Why would they seek refuge here?" The answer came 3 days later when the small Lurarian vessel limped into Earth orbit. Its captain, a crystalline being named Krill, explained their situation to the assembled Earth-Vrel Council. Word spreads through the galaxy, Krill's translator conveyed. "Earth accepts those the Council rejects. Our mining colony refused Council resource quotas, keeping more for our own people's needs. They labeled us dissident and ordered our termination." General White leaned forward. "You're saying others know about Earth's stance?" "Whispers travel faster than ships," Krill replied, light refracting through his crystal form. "Earth is becoming a symbol, a place where compassion outweighs protocol." That evening, Tom and Lisa stood on a hill overlooking both settlements. The Vrel domes now stood beside the smaller Lurarian crystal structures, with human facilities connecting them. Lights twinkled as darkness fell, creating a strangely beautiful hybrid community. "The Council won't tolerate this," Tom said quietly. "A planet of outcasts becoming a beacon of hope? It threatens everything they represent." Lisa watched a group of Lurarian children cautiously meeting young Vrel, while human teachers encouraged their interaction. "Then we'll need to be ready," she replied. "But look what we've already created. Different species learning to live together, combining strengths, overcoming fear. That's worth protecting." Tom's mandibles clicked softly in agreement as they gazed at the growing haven for the Forsaken. The warning came at midnight, a cascade of alerts from the outer system sensors. 50 ships, then 100, then more appeared at the edge of detection range. The Galactic Council had arrived with a fleet large enough to blockade an entire star system. Within hours, Earth's defense forces mobilized. Military units from every nation deployed around refugee settlements. The experimental shield generators powered up, creating shimming domes of energy over major cities and the alien communities. "They've launched communication probes," Mira reported from the command center. Screens displayed the massive Council armada taking position around Earth. "No weapons active yet, but their targeting systems are scanning our defenses." Tom and Lisa stood with Earth's Unified Defense Council as the message from the Council Fleet Commander appeared on the main screen. Admiral Zor, a biomechanical entity from the core systems, regarded them with cold optical sensors. "Earth has been declared in violation of Council directive," Zor stated flatly. "You harbor dissident species and encourage defiance of established galactic order. Surrender all non-human entities for processing within 12 hours, or we will extract them ourselves." General White stepped forward. "And if we refuse? Then Earth will learn why the Council has maintained order for 10,000 years, Zor replied before terminating the connection. The Council room erupted in urgent discussion. Military leaders argued for immediate counterattacks. Scientists insisted the shields needed more time. Politicians debated diplomatic options. Tom raised his voice above the chaos. "I speak for all refugees. We will surrender ourselves to spare Earth from destruction." "Absolutely not," Lisa countered firmly. "That's exactly what they expect, that we'll abandon each other when faced with superior force." As debate continued, reports arrived of Council landing craft preparing for deployment. Their intentions were clear: targeted extraction of refugee settlements. 3 hours later, Tom stood at the perimeter of the main settlement as landing craft descended through the atmosphere. Behind him, rather than the ordered evacuation he'd expected, hundreds of humans had formed a living barrier around the Vrel and Lurarian communities. Doctors, teachers, factory workers, and soldiers, ordinary humans with no special powers or advanced technology, stood shoulder to shoulder around the aliens they had come to see as friends. When the Council forces landed and deployed, they found not cowering refugees but this human shield. Their commander, a reptilian officer, advanced toward the line. "Stand aside," he ordered. "This is Council business." A young human teacher stepped forward. "These are our friends. Our neighbors. You'll have to go through us first." The commander raised his weapon. "That can be arranged." To everyone's surprise, Tom pushed through the human line to stand alone between the two groups. His 4 arms raised in a gesture of peace. "I offer myself," he declared. "Take me as representative of all refugees. I accept full responsibility for the violation of Council law." The commander hesitated, his weapon still raised. "Why would you sacrifice yourself?" Tom's antennae straightened with dignity. "Because I've learned from humanity that some principles are worth dying for." A strange silence fell over the standoff as Council forces witnessed something their calculating society had never valued: selfless courage. The Council commander lowered his weapon, compound eyes fixed on Tom. "You would die for these others?" he asked, genuine confusion in his voice. "This violates all rational self-interest protocols." Tom remained steady. "That is what the Council has never understood. There are bonds stronger than protocols." A tense silence stretched between them until a new voice broke through the communication system. "Stand down, Commander." Admiral Zor's image appeared on the portable screens. The Admiral's optical sensors were focused not on Tom but on the human shield still standing firm behind him. "I wish to speak with Earth's leaders," Admiral Zor continued. "Not as ultimatum, but as consultation." 2 hours later, in a hastily arranged meeting chamber, Admiral Zor sat across from representatives of Earth and the refugee species. The Admiral's biomechanical body hummed softly as he spoke. "In 10,000 years of Council rule, we have never witnessed a less developed species willing to face extinction to protect others," Zor stated. "It defies our predictive models." General White leaned forward. "Perhaps your models need updating." "Perhaps," Zor acknowledged, surprising everyone. Reports of Earth's actions have spread through communication channels across 17 systems. 3 minor Council members have already called for reassessment of refugee policies. Dr. Lisa exchanged glances with Tom. "You're saying we've started something?" "A question, at minimum," Zor replied. "The question of whether advancement should be measured by technology alone." The Admiral's optical sensors shifted to Tom. "Your willingness to sacrifice yourself was instructive." The negotiations continued through the night. By morning, an unprecedented agreement had been reached: Earth would not be attacked, and the refugee settlements would remain under human protection. In exchange, Earth would become the founding member of a new interstellar association, one based on cooperation rather than domination. 1 year later, representatives from 23 species gathered in the Great Assembly Hall built at the center of what was now called Unity City. Once just a refugee camp, it had grown into a thriving metropolis where humans and aliens lived and worked together. Tom stood at the podium, his once dull exoskeleton now healthy and gleaming. Beside him stood Dr. Lisa, recently appointed as Earth's first ambassador to the new Galactic Assembly. "Our journey began in desperation," Tom addressed the gathered delegates, his voice translated into a dozen languages. "The Vrel were deemed unworthy of saving by those who measured value only in power and resources." He gestured to the humans scattered throughout the assembly. "But we found a species that measured differently, one that saw worth in compassion, courage, and connection. Humanity saved us not because we deserved it by Council standards, but because by human standards, all thinking beings deserve a chance to live." Lisa stepped forward to join him. "The old Council called this weakness. We have proven it is strength. Together, we build something new, a galaxy where advancement is measured not by the power of weapons, but by the power to care for one another."